Failure in production happens to everybody, no matter how big or small your company or your product, no matter how agile or waterfall your process. And when a big failure happens, everybody goes into critical fix mode, prioritizing the fix above everything else. And after the fix has been released into production, it's back to business as usual. But wouldn't it be better if you would have a process of analyzing what happened? So instead of only fixing the problem, you would also be able to prevent future problems. So you can learn from your mistakes. The way forward is to learn from failure, to become proactive instead of reactive. Let's talk about the post-mortem. Part 1. Blameless. A post-mortem is basically a specialized retrospective, where you look back at what happened and what you can learn from it. But instead of looking back at a sprint from a retrospective, you're now looking back at a specific failure. Something maybe last week happened, maybe your web app was down or your API was down, and you want to inspect what happened and try and learn from it. But the thing with a post-mortem and a retrospective is that it can easily turn into a blame game. And the thing with blame is that it decreases the psychological safety. And when you are blaming, when you have a low psychological safety, you are preventing your group from learning. Blame prevents people from speaking up with concerns, from pointing out each other's mistakes and blind spots. It creates a culture of fear where people would rather cover up their tracks than be honest. And such an unsafe environment actively prevents people from learning from their mistakes. It prevents you from finding the root cause. But there is another way. A post-mortem is blameless if people have no fear of punishment or retribution. The trick is to focus on the situation, on the how and why something happened, and not to focus on the people, not on the who. But sometimes it's not easy to only talk about the how and the why of a situation. Sometimes a failure can be traced to a single individual. But even then, there are ways to talk about the why. You could treat this human error as a systemic failure of the organization, of the team, of the process. There is something in the team or the process that made this person press this button, believing it would not bring the system down. And then the system was brought down. Is that a human error? Or is that the system is not designed well enough? Or this person was never onboarded well enough? These are just examples, but you could treat it as a systemic failure. This action made sense to this person. That person believed it wouldn't go wrong, but it did. What is wrong with the system or the process? Part 2. Prepare. Somebody should prepare and champion the post-mortem meeting for it to go efficiently. And there are 2 important ways to prepare. Write up a definition of failure and create a first timeline of the failure. Let's talk about the definition first. To have an effective session, you want to describe the problem in an unambiguous way from the perspective of a client or user. You want to write about the impact of the problem and in what way they perceived the problem and what consequences the problem had. You don't want to focus on the cause of the problem right now. So what did you notice? Or worse, what did your client or user notice? Let's look at an example. At 2:15, users started seeing a 502 bad gateway error while trying to log in. Users who cleared their browser cookies after seeing the 502 bad gateway error could proceed to use the service while not logged in. And users who didn't attempt to log in at all didn't experience the failure. And notice that this definition didn't focus on the cause at all. That's something you want to figure out together as a team. The second way to prepare is to create a timeline of the failure, from when it was reported until when it was resolved in the end. And then you want to leave some room on the left so that you can fill in the cause as a team. Let's look at an example. I've got a very basic timeline here. The reported state is in the middle, where the cloud alert was the first hint for our team that something was wrong. And then afterwards we quickly had a team meeting. Some people started pair programming. The PO in parallel started informing customers. There was even somebody who updated the status page. And at some point, the pairing or whatever happened in the fix solved the problem and we could deploy the fix. And that's the moment when it was resolved. Sometimes these timelines are a few hours or a few minutes at best. And worst case, they're days or however long you took to fix it, or however long from the cause until the report there is, which could also be a long time. Another way to prepare your post-mortem is to ask everybody to read this article. I came across this a while ago and I absolutely love it. It's spot on. It discusses the real problems of team dynamics with post-mortems. It's a recommended read. Part 3, the post-mortem. When running a post-mortem meeting, I recommend to instruct the group first on how to choose their words carefully. I recommend to set the tone first. This is where you can explain to people how psychological safety works. This is where you can ask them to be very precise and careful with their words, to be very factual. If you haven't done this before, you can put these words on a slide and read them aloud as an instruction. This is a blameless post-mortem. We're not here to blame, we're here to learn. Psychological safety is the belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. We will focus on the situation, on the how and why something happens. We will not focus on the people. We will work with the assumption that nobody has ill intent, and we try to assume the most generous interpretation. After you've set the tone, you probably want to look at the definition of failure, so everybody is aligned with what the problem looks like from the outside perspective, and then you want to move to your factual timeline. Show the timeline you made. Ask what is missing. Ask what is incorrect. See how you can move forward as a group from here. Together, you can add the missing steps, you can add the cause. Maybe you can go back even further before this deploy. Sticky over here, there was even a commit, there was a decision made by a developer. This is okay to do, which in the end turned out to cause the failure. It was not okay to do because there was an assumption that was made. If you can trace it back all the way there, then you can really find the root cause of the problem. It's important here to stick with the facts. If everybody agrees with the facts, only then you can move forward to the next phase. And after you've got the facts straight, it's time to move to the next phase where you have insights and ideas to think about how you could respond faster, how you could prevent the problem, if there's any tools that you're missing. Any of these things that will make the future better. My advice is to pick an existing format for this. I like the Blameless Post-Mortem canvas. Everybody takes 5 to 10 minutes to write up a bunch of stickies in all of these boxes, except the summary, that's where you put your definition of failure, and then you move forward from there. After everybody has 1 to 3 stickies per section, it's grouping, deduplication, and asking questions and explaining to each other so that everybody understands. And once you've got a feeling that you understand each other, it's time to create follow-up actions. In the canvas I've shown, most of these sections can create ideas for improvement. But what's the best one? If you have 10 ideas, you're not going to do them all. You probably won't have time for them. So which one has merit? Do you want to vote? Do you want to discuss? How do you want to proceed? This is where you discuss the ideas. This is where you decide, I want to move forward with this one. And as a last thing, an action will only happen if it's concrete enough, it has an owner and a deadline. Set it at that time. And that's it. I hope you liked it. I hope this was useful. I'd like to hear from you. Have you ever ran a post-mortem? Or a retro that felt like a post-mortem because it was about a specific failure? How did it go? Please leave a comment and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.